Hi, my name is Sharon Burch. I'm the author, a music education specialist, the author of the Freddie the Frog storybook series, as well as the content um, lesson creator of the Jazz for Young People curriculum guide. And I'm super excited to share it with you. So, I have a couple of questions for you first. Have you ever scrambled to find something for either Black History Month or for the April Jazz Month, or maybe you have a jazz background and you are a jazz musician, but you are looking for more ways to break it down for your kids? Or what I find is most common is that you are a classically trained musician. That's your background, that's your comfort zone, and you've been curious about how to teach jazz with your kids, but it's been intimidating, or maybe you thought that wasn't even possible because it was such a foreign, different type of approach. Well, I'm here to help you. What we have created is specifically for all of the above. Okay, and I'll tell you how I got started. It started with my Freddie the Frog storybook series that I mentioned a little bit ago. So I had written my four first books, and on the fifth book, I reconnect with my mentor, who was my inspiration for going into the field of music education, wanting to inspire kids the same way she had inspired me. And her passion was jazz. So we connected, and she said, "Wow, how can we bring jazz to kids?" And that started my exploration. And we dug in. And as soon as I opened the door, digging in to understand it myself, and then how to break it down to make it easy um, for me to teach to kids and for others to do the same with a similar background as mine. Specifically, I never looked back. In fact, I'm so deeply rooted in jazz now that I am the managing director of the Jazz Education Network, as well as the education consultant for Jazz at Lincoln Center and how to break down concepts and connect the dots, right? So that's what this is all about. So let's dig in. I'll show you what it is. And the other good news is that I wasn't planning on this being a possible remote learning resource, but it actually can be. It's already like 90% there, and then just with a couple of quick twists, you can make it for in-person, which we all want, or remote learning. They could both work. So I'm going to share and also put on my glasses to do so. Apparently I need that. So I'm going to share my screen and show you around. All right, so this is the teacher's guide for jazz for young people. And it's a combination of two things. Wynton Marsalis, it's his depth of knowledge of jazz. I mean, he grew up in New Orleans. There's such a rich history. And of course, he's the artistic director, a professional musician for the world of jazz, and just an amazing human and artist. But his core philosophy is down here at the bottom. Everybody can love jazz at any age, and literature teaches the concepts. And when he's talking about literature, he's, truly thinking about the music of the great jazz that's come before us, and that we can learn from that. Now, for me, I can wholeheartedly agree with that, especially the more I've dug into the world of jazz. But my core center is it's learning by doing. And I'm assuming if you're an elementary music teacher, and you might be a high school teacher, but either way, our kids and us, we humans, we learn best by doing. So whether you're holding a trumpet in your hand like Wynton is, you are learning by doing, right? So at the elementary level, we need to break it down so that the kids can be learning by doing. They're going to learn that great literature by doing something, playing along with it, singing along with it, creating, composing, all of those things. So this is how it works. Now I'm going to start with a very simple exercise, which is actually in lesson 1 of the first book. So the book that you see here, there's eventually going to be 10 volumes, but this is volume 1. And we're going to dive into a sampling of volume 1 and a sampling of volume 2. And the good news is, so hang with me, is that if you can make it to the end, I'm going to share with you how you can get a free lesson from volume 1, complete with slides that you can use with your kids in the classroom or remotely, from volume 1 and from volume 2, as well as me helping to hold your hand and walk you through it. Okay, so hang in there with me. Trust me, those teachers who have tried this are loving it. And even for jazz musicians, not even for, but I have jazz musicians who that's their passion, but wanted to find a way to break it down for their kids. And they just loved it. It kind of connected the dots. So let's dive in and see what that's like. So back to this first little simple exercise. All right, so hang in there with me. I'm going to pretend that that you and I are having a conversation. Now, since I'm doing this, it's pre-recorded, I'm going to have to trust you're going to play along with me, right? Right, so I'm going to do this little exercise and pretend to be having a conversation with you, except we're cats. So here I go. Meow, 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 meow. And then you answer me. Meow, meow, meow. Meow. Now, if you're doing this with a classroom of kids, they're going to respond with cat meows differently each time due to the inflections and the expressions that I'm using or you're using, right? And hopefully you did the same. Most likely you sipped your coffee and waited till I got past this. But please imagine that, because now if you can imagine that the kids are doing this conversation back and forth with you, it's the first step for them to understand that a conversation isn't just limited to the language, the English language, or whatever language you're speaking with your kids. It's not the words. The words is not the complete conversation, but a conversation goes beyond that. And so this game to kids really demonstrates it. So the next, in a real physical class situation, I would have kids pair off doing that cat conversation, and they really get into it, right? Right, so now I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, or a few questions, because one of the gold mines that I discovered about jazz is that when we think about 21st century skills, all of these things that you see in front of you are inherent to what I would call the practice of jazz. Whether you're at the highest level, like Wynton, Marsalis, or you're at the very beginning level, as in you and myself and the kids. So in a cat conversation, and of course we're having to use our imagination a little bit, were you creative? Or were we creative? Yes. Did we collaborate? Well, in real time, whether the Zoom call was live or if you're live with your kids, absolutely. Did it involve critical thinking? Yes, because you had to figure out how to process and what was I trying to say, right? And how to react. Complex communication, absolutely. Did you have to be adaptable and flexible? Yes. It's forced into it. It's inherent, right? And were you productive and accountable? Now, in a real live setting, absolutely, because I would be sitting there just waiting for the kids to respond. And it forces productivity without saying anything else, and accountability. In a pre-recorded, that goes out the window, right? So, but in real time or in a live video call, it certainly is. So those things are inherent to every part of jazz, even if you're in the performance group or you're in the activity here. So just a quick overview. What does this include? It includes lesson plans, digital downloads with the step-by-step slides, which I'm going to send, showing you in just a second. Audio recordings, which of course you can share, whether you're sharing your screen on a video or if you are live, obviously. Narration by Wynton. You don't have to figure this all out on your own. I've broken it down so to make it easy and digestible, and I've used Wynton's knowledge and depth of content and their amazing recordings to do that, so you can trust it. And there's worksheets that you can share and download, print, send to the kids, whatever that might be. Plus, it gets even better. There are watch and teach videos where you see me working with kids in real time, so you understand what that lesson looks like. And they only did enough of them for when I felt like you might need them. And then once it's like, okay, this is kind of the same strategy, we didn't do a watch and teach video. But then the classroom videos are classroom videos designed that any age of kid could be watching, and students can be watching these videos, and it's going to work for them. So I have some high school teachers that are using this as well to introduce their kids to jazz if they're brand new to it. So a few more things that go along with that. This is designed to work for anybody in any situation using classroom instruments that teachers already own or you can easily afford. Now, of course, if you're teaching remotely due to the current circumstances, you can take this one step further. And this is where, if it's pitched instruments, obviously there's a limitation because, a lot of your kids are not going to have pitched instruments as a resource. But unpitched instruments, yes, we can lead them, and I'm sure you've already done this, led them into grabbing 2 spoons from the kitchen drawer, or just do it yourself type of home instruments to create unpitched rhythm instruments. And we have plenty of lessons that involve using their singing voice and echo singing and unpitched rhythm instruments. So those lessons right away can work for you in either situation. We're going to dive in. I'll show you a little bit about the lesson that's called second line, and that'll start to give you an example. So second line lesson is lesson 2. So it's making an assumption that you did lesson 1, and the kids now have an understanding of what collective improvisation is by experiencing the cat conversation. Because collective improvisation is a conversation between musicians. And lesson 1 takes them to that place, right? So where they can start to hear that, oh, just like a cat changes, that meow conversation changed the inflections going back and forth. Well, now they can start to hear, when they listen to instruments, that they can hear, oh, that instrument sounded kind of like this, and then this one responded, and it was actually a conversation, not just different people playing whatever they wanted. And that's kind of the goal that we want to get to in lesson 1. All right, so the slides, which we're going to go to an actual slide in a moment, but I'm going to give you an overview first. The slides are downloadable to your computer, and they're built in HTML5. So if you're kind of techie, then you already know what that is, and if not, no worries. Basically, it means you're downloading a folder of files, and when you click on a link, it'll open it up in your web browser. But it's not dependent on the internet at the time. So let's say you're in a classroom situation, you do not need, it's not mandatory that you're connected to the internet. They're just using that web browser. Now, obviously teaching remotely, you're going to be connected, and that gives you some extra perks, access to videos when you can be connected to the internet while teaching. But I know with traveling teachers, sometimes it doesn't always work out well. Let me come back here. So a couple of other things to notice. You'll notice that some of these slides are a different color. These indicate sections. So in every lesson, that's a lot of slides when you see 47 slides. Don't let that overwhelm you. But there are so many times that you need to shorten that lesson, or you only have 10 minutes, or there was a fire drill in the middle of your lesson, and you need a quick and easy place to get to and then start the next time. So these are suggested places where you could have stopped the lesson before and then picked up again at that colored slide. But you can click on any of these to jump directly to the slide. So let's dig in. So in lesson 2, it's establishing each little piece of the elements that make up jazz, and specifically New Orleans jazz. So in this particular slide, I'm going to demonstrate some other things as well. So I'm just going to talk you through this. Wynton's going to talk a little bit about clapping on the big four, and then we get to clap on the big four. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And you're leading the kids through this. So I'm going to keep on moving through, and then we have the snare drum, and then the bass and sousaphone, collective improvisation. So all of these have audio snippets that you and the kids can do. Everything's learning by doing. So as you're listening, you have a little bit of, okay, here's what we're going to do. Then you turn on the music and you do it along with that music. All right, so this one's going to dig into the second line. And the second line is a New Orleans tradition that still exists today, where, you know, parades, they have parades all the time. It's really cool. And they use parades to celebrate. They use, in every way, people's lives, right? The New Orleans function, which is when somebody passes, that there is a dirge, a slow march that's going, while the processional, where they're going to the graveyard, and after someone is laid to rest, then they kick it off with the celebratory music of like celebrating that life. And that's one form, right? So the second line is a real strong tradition of a march that is commonly heard. It's a piece of music, and it just means that the horns and the drums, they're in the front of, the front line are the horns leading the parade, and the second line is everybody joining in behind them and being in the march. So this one is going to lead you and the kids right through how to get to play along with this song. So that's the basic concept, to be able to get to play along. And I'm not taking anything for granted. So if your kids already know how to count measures or bars, in jazz they tend to say bars all the time rather than measures, great, skip these slides. That's kind of the concept in all of these. If you look at it and go, oh, my kids already know this, skip that slide. But if they don't know how to count, which might be the case, especially at elementary, then there's slides baked into the system so that we are not making assumptions at any step. So here we go. The emphasis in swing music, which is just kind of a basic part of jazz, is that the emphasis is on counts 2 and 4, or beats 2 and 4. So we want to start to give them that experience of going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You got the idea. Now the form of music, because jazz is like bringing theory to life, the form of the music is going to repeat sets of 12 bars. So we walk kids through, we're going to play the recording, and we're going to count the 12 bars as you listen. So in this step, we taught them that it's a set of repeating 12 bars. And to be able to keep track of where we're at, we'll just replace the first number of every measure or bar with that number of that set. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. You literally do that with your kids to make sure they're all on the same page. And then give them a goal. Every slide has something that they need to figure out. So as we listen, boys and girls, how many sets of 12 are in this piece? And then you put on the music and they're counting and they're trying to keep track. So you get the idea. So one of the reasons I did not dig in deeply to this lesson is because it does involve pitched instruments, which is great if you're in the real class. And I love to use boom whackers. I love to use boom whackers because I can gamify it and hand them out. And then they play on the downbeat of every measure. There, that pitch, B flat, E flat, or F. And you can also stack the chord tones so that they play those. And then I'd love to have that at the end of 12 bars, because this forces them to count. At the end of 12 bars, they pass their instrument or pass their boom whacker, making boom whackers the easiest one to do and fun. And then depending on which boom whacker they have to quickly realize, okay, I'm playing now, or I need to wait until bar 5. Okay, whew. Hoping this makes sense. I think so, though. Yeah, I can guarantee it'll make sense when you actually use the slides. All right, so that gives you a little idea of how that works. Now, here's those watch and teach videos that I mentioned, where you can click on and see me in action, and I'll show you one in just a second. And then the classroom videos, you'll notice that I am not in the video, and neither are the kids in the video. That makes it an experience that you can adapt for your kids. And that way, if high schoolers are using this with their own pitched instrument or just for fun as a little, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's kind of ageless, or an adult is using this. And it also keeps it that you are the teacher and not me. So if it says classroom video, it's designed that it's going to have the slide that they need, and they're getting to interact or play along with or sing along with the pros in this video. And these are real pros. These pros are professional musicians who live and work in New York City for the most part. And they are the best at what they do. They're incredible musicians. So your kids get to play along and be listening back to the beginning when I said that Wynton's philosophy is that great literature teaches and anybody can play. Well, not only are we serving up great literature, but we're serving up great artists and a highest level of playing that your kids get to play along with. It's not some musician who just does this part-time, or a studio musician who plays a little bit of everything. These are legit, true jazz musicians, and there is a difference. So it's just a very cool experience. Okay, so I think that's a really good place. That's where I mentioned the free lesson download. And then volume 2. So now that I've kind of walked you through what that looks like, I'm going to share my screen differently. And feel free, if I'm like, I know this is a recording, but reach out to me, Sharon@SharonBurch.com. Feel free to ask any questions. I'll be happy to answer them. I'll be happy to give you a free download to the lesson. So Sharon@SharonBurch.com. All right, so I'm going to share my screen a little bit differently with some of the examples of music, right, and what's available. So first of all, when you purchase the volume, the book looks like this. And if you are new to doing this, at Hal Leonard, they have something called the Hal Leonard Library. And whenever you purchase a publication that they produce, you open the front cover, and inside the front cover of the book is a code. And you log into your library, you put in the code. So here's an access code up here. And immediately that piece of work will open up. So I'm going to click on volume 2, and I'm, logging me out. I'll log back in. There we go. All right, so here's the book, and then the slides that you would receive, you would just click this and download the slides for each lesson. And that's the gold, right? There's 2 pieces of big gold in these books, because the books are just kind of an outline, like a teacher's outline of each lesson, the big concepts, kind of bullet points, so it's easy for you to see. But where the magic really happens is when you download the slides and you open them up on your computer. You also have the option to download the audio if you want to use that separately. And this beautiful thing, each of the complete pieces is playable. I'm going to use heebie-jeebies for this particular one. If I click play on this one that says playback, now I have, it's maybe a little loud over my voice here. now I have the option not only to play it online, but if I want to slow it down or change the pitch, I may do so also. That's amazing, especially if you're playing with pitched instruments in your classroom and you're working with the kids and that music is just going a little bit too fast and you need to work up to it. What a tool, fabulous tool. So I just want to make sure you knew about that because it's an amazing process. Or let's say that the original recording is in a key that does not work well with ORF instruments. You don't have what you need. Change the key, adjust it so it will work with your ORF instruments. All right, so now there's also additional video links. I'm going to show you what those are. We did more videos, just all kinds of resources. So we're about to go there, I'll show you that. And then worksheets you can download and an instrument sheet that shows instruments that they can point to. Okay, so now let's see what that looks like, but that's where you get it. Is I'm going to go to my right here. All right, so now if I downloaded those slides, imagine, go back to home, and that's what it looks like. So you can see right now, if you were doing a remote class, it's very visible to the kids, easy to see, or if you were in your physical classroom, you could do that. So when the Saints go marching in, so it starts off with a note to the teacher. If there are any instruments needed for this lesson, it's there on that second slide, or I guess slide 3, of unpitched instruments and pitched instruments. So in this lesson, obviously, if I'm teaching remotely, I probably can't count on the pitched instruments, but I could certainly use the unpitched instruments. And so I can prepare my kids to go grab 2 spoons out of the kitchen drawer, or make a do-it-yourself shaker with a little water bottle and some rice or beans or something, right? All right, so now we're into the lesson. This would be the first slide that you would share with your kids, and you would prepare to count along. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then say, okay, now boys and girls, if we need to keep track of those measures, we're going to replace the first beat with the bar number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to ask them to tap and count on beats 2 and 4. And this is a fun one. If they would like to tap with their left foot on beats 2 and 4 like a drummer playing the hi-hat in a drum set. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, right? Got it? And then anytime you want to reset, it goes back to the first slide. So I'm clicking this orange button in the bottom. And then Wynton Marsalis talks a little bit about Louis Armstrong. And there's always a little bit of Wynton in almost every slide set. It just depends as he guides it. You'll notice this is 2 minutes and 35 seconds long. I'm not going to let it play for that long, but it gives you a taste of it.
Louis Armstrong brought the language of jazz to the world. He toured throughout Europe, Asia, Africa, Australia, everywhere. He was featured in over 40 films during his lifetime. He had such an identifiable personality, full of joy and sorrow and humor and humility, and most importantly, soul. Soul is when you want to use what you have to make other people feel good, even if it's just saying good morning. And Louis's soul was in his sound.
All right, so you get the idea. It's a great way to share and keep kids engaged. All right, so this is Volume 2 is all about Louis Armstrong, which we absolutely adore. And then you would either distribute the egg shakers or ask the kids to, grab their little plastic bottle with egg shakers. And I like to use shakers on beats 2 and 4 because it kind of gives you the sense of the hi-hat, right? Right? And then in a real time, in a physical space of multiple kids, I would have them pass their instrument to the left of each section. This helps ensure that they're with you and they're counting and they're keeping track of where they're at. So just pretend right now, grab your pretend shaker or your set of keys or whatever you have and give this a try. Again, we'll just do part of it so you get the concept, the idea. Oops, sorry about that. So I don't stop the music. Let me come back here to this one. And I should, that's a great way to point it out. I clicked the blue button in the bottom right by accident. I meant to click the orange button. So this slide is in here two ways. If you want the kids to see the entire thing, for the whole time and not be clicking away, you can show them this slide. I prefer to guide them and make sure their eyes are at the right place. So we created an orange arrow here that's going to lead them along. So let's give it a take two. Here we go. We're going to count off these 4 measures and then be ready to play. I'll be clicking the orange button to guide where we're at. So you get the idea. Now, what would my adaptation be if I'm doing this remotely? And you could even do this in the class. If it's not realistic to have them pass their instrument, which that's ideal. You have a classroom, you get them set up. Every time they get to the bottom of that section, they pass and the kids love it. They're ready to play a different instrument, right? You know how that goes. But let's say that you're teaching remotely, then I would ask them to turn. You know, especially if you can do this live. I hope you can teach remotely live. That would be great. And if yes, then on 8, I would have them do a circle. And that way you can visually assess and see them turn at the correct place. And then you could do it one more time, and to test that they're sticking with you and counting that they're hearing those sections, then you can have them turn at the bottom of each one and you will know and be able to give feedback. So it seems really simple, but as you and I both know, kids, don't often know how to count, or they don't have a reason to pay attention to it until you're playing. Learning by doing. Remember, I mentioned the highlighted number on the home screen. So I'm going to test it now. Down here in the bottom right, I have the little house. When I click on that, notice here that I am on slide 9. So I'm going to click and notice that slide 9 is at the end of that first section. And if I click slide 10, that's a good marker for me to be right back ready for the next one. So there's slide 9, optional stopping point, return the instruments, end of lesson, move on, right? Or continue the lesson with pitched instruments. And so now we would distribute the pitched instruments. And then we would do the next part. So let's say that you are in class and you are going to use the pitched instruments. I divvy these out. So some kids have the F, some kids have the C, some have the B flat, and some have the G. I include the whole chord. Notice for F, I have F, A, and C. So the F is this F. But if you want to have the whole chord sound and you are using either mallet instruments, or and in this case you could use your Orff instruments because the key works, or you're using boom whackers or something else, you can designate the kids in groups. And in that case, I would have all the kids that are going to play the F chord, or the 1 chord, are going to be physically located in the same place, but playing the different pitches of that chord. Okay, does that make sense? And then that makes it easy for me to direct them and point to them, especially when they're new at this. So now they would play the F chord on the downbeat only. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, and then F, 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 and then move to the C7 chord. And I would practice that I'd have them count out loud, play on the downbeat without any music on. Notice the orange arrow says click 2 times, because these are the sections that are a little bit different, so we need to practice each one of them. And I'm asking, what's different at the end? So they just finished playing this, and I want them to identify what's different at the end. That's what we're doing as musicians. We're studying the music. So we're teaching them how to study the music in a very simple beginning way, right? And then we're going to practice this part where they're going to count silently or very softly and then come in on their note. And once they're ready, if they've done that successfully, now we're ready to add the music to it. So it'd be the same music you just heard, but now we have pitched instruments. Okay, so I think you get the idea, or hopefully you do, and if not, you know, you can dig in there and try it yourself. So that's how that works. All right, so I don't want to take up too much more time. Hopefully this is giving you a concept of how this works. I'm going to click through slides. After they've played with the pitched instruments, now we're going to do a review. So every set of lesson slides has a review. Return the instruments. What do you remember? And depending on what we did in that lesson, what we studied is different. Now this is distribute the instrument sheets. So there is a download. I forgot to download them right here, but it's basically a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that has pictures of all the instruments that are typically played in a jazz band or jazz orchestra. And for sure, it has all the instruments that you heard in this particular music. And I like to have each of the students have that. I have a laminated one for each student, and that lays on their desk in regular time, right? But you could project it or send it in a digital version and they circle it, and then they could send that to you. Variations, but basically we're going to use that. So when the Saints go marching in, point to the answers on your instrument sheet. So now they played with unpitched instruments and they learned how to count and follow along. Then they played with pitched instruments if that was applicable and feasible. And so now they've actually been learning a lot by playing along and counting. They've been soaking in the sound. They've been soaking in the music. They've been soaking in the feeling by switching instruments or spinning. Now they have identified sections and started to tune into how a section and phrasing and bars and form without even knowing it. You didn't say it. You didn't need to say it. But they have been picking that up. So now it's time for review. Same music would play, and we would have them counting and then asking this question. Solo, call and response, or collective improvisation. What are you hearing? And so do you remember, what did we hear in the first A1 section? Did we hear a soloist? Did we hear call and response or collective improvisation? And if you guessed collective improvisation, you are correct. In the A2 section, same question. So you have them guess collective improvisation. And what are they pointing to on their instrument sheet? They are pointing to all the instruments that they're hearing. Or you can use one of the worksheets as asking this question and they can point to their answer. All right, and this one is all collective improvisation until we get to the break. And you didn't get to hear that, but if you remember the slide, it's the drums. Only the drums are playing on the break, and then we have the coda. So That's similar to what the instrument sheet looks like, except that there's no people on the instrument sheet. And now we can name, okay, what instruments did you hear in the front line? And remember, when we talked about second line, those are the lead instruments that are leading the band. So the frontline instruments are those three. If you said trombone, clarinet, and trumpet, you are correct. Yay! And I like to do this in segments because that gives me an opportunity to point and say, what's the name of that instrument? What's the name of this instrument? What's the name of this instrument? And then show the answer. Name the instruments in the rhythm section. And then we would allow them to do that. And name this one, that's a piano. What's this one called? What's this one called? And there's the answers, okay? So all broken down. Who brought the language of jazz to the world? And the answer is Louis Armstrong. And then if they've forgotten, because now they're in tune, now they've gotten engaged with the music, this is a repeat of what they heard in the beginning, but making it easy for you to repeat. Whew. All right, that's the end of that. So a couple more things I would love to share with you while you're here. Hopefully you're still here with me. This is exciting stuff. It's accessible. It's like I said, hopefully you can tell this is something you could use, whether you're in the classroom, whether you're in a band setting and you want to do some extra things to get them connected to the elements of jazz, or you're teaching remotely. So here's some great tools that would be helpful. And hopefully I have these all queued up, but now that I've been talking, they may be gone. So notice that this video says watch and teach. So remember that watch and teach means I'm in the video and the kids are in the video, and it's really designed for you, the teacher, to go, oh, I see how she did this. Cool, I'm gonna do that, and maybe I'll do my own twist. So here's a little watch and teach. We'll just do part of it.
You're only going to play on, I think for counting purposes, we'll play on the downbeat. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. Pass it to, if you're in the back row, you're going to pass it to your left, to the next person, and then they'll play for the next set of 8. When you get to the end, then you'll pass, or Harper, you'll pass it to Harper. Harper, you pass it to Dylan. Okay? And if you're in the middle row, when you finish playing 8 bars, you're going to pass this way, middle row. And he's going to pass up. And then you'll pass to the
We'll skip to the
instrument in your hand. Yep, perfect. And which way are you going to pass in the back? 2, And what do you do after 8?
You pass it.
You pass it, and you know which direction.
Yeah.
Get ready, because it's going to start right away.
So hopefully you noticed that at the beginning, we intentionally kept in some of the instructional piece because it's so critical. And if you're an experienced teacher, you know this, you've lived through it, you've worked through it. If you're new to it and you've wondered, I can't imagine passing out all these instruments and it all goes crazy, right? Those pieces that I left in the beginning will help you out. It's really about specific directions of exactly what to do and having that all streamlined. Also, I highly suggest only passing out in a real situation, obviously, passing out every other kid, every other student has an instrument in their hand. As you noticed in that little video clip, the little girl who was anticipating and could not wait to have her turn with the instrument, because she was waiting, she was actually peer teaching and helping this child beside her to play at the right time. If every single kid has the instrument in their hand, they're so consumed with what they're doing, they're not paying attention to the person next to them. So I always just pass out every other student or every 3 students, and then they have to be doing their job to get to play the instrument. So just an extra little tip. All right, now notice that this video is named Classroom Video Scat Singing. If it says classroom video, it is ready to roll to do with your kids straight ahead. Brianna Thomas is an amazing blues singer. She's the guest artist here, and this is something that you and your kids can do along with her, which would be great for remote teaching. What I love about these are all designed to be interactive, and that it's your kids, that those are the voices we're hearing rather than singing at the same time. So we have several of those. So that's a beautiful one you can use. This one is a demonstration of playing along with unpitched instruments and scat singing. And I'll show you what that is.
The Jeep is talking about the dance for heebie-jeebies, you, me, girls and boys.
So there, it's entertaining, but now they can also be playing along with the pitched instruments with Brianna singing, which is really fantastic. And so more and more and more and more, right? They're all here, they're all for you. And so my final invitation here is, if that seems like, all the pieces are everywhere, I've also pulled together those videos and put them in an organized fashion with each lesson, and you're welcome to be part of that. Sign up for this free teacher's guide. This is not the teacher's guide itself. You have to purchase this teacher's guide to get the slides to download. But this is kind of what I would say a shortcut for busy teachers, that you get to preview the lessons, but kind of like I'm sharing how to do it, what to do it, except in little tiny videos. And then any extra videos that we created that I think would be helpful to go along with that lesson is inside here. So this is like a bonus on top of getting this book on, and then downloading the slides so you can use them. So downloading these slides, let's go back to home for that whole walking through lesson. Then on top of that, if you reach out to me, Sharon at SharonBurch.com, I will also provide you free access to me, helping give you extra tips and all of the extra videos organized, right? So this signing up for this free thing does not give you the lesson. You have to purchase the book to get the lessons. And then this is additional help to guide you along and have these all organized as well. Woo, that was a lot. All right, so hopefully this is very helpful. I'll pull up this one more slide to help get you what you need if you are interested, and share this. Where is that? All right, so I am working on volume 3 now, and plan to work on volumes 4, 5, 6, and 7. So not only, if you want to email me at Sharon at SharonBurch.com and ask, hey, can I have the free jazz slides? Remember, you will get 2 free complete lessons with the digital download slides, complete with the teacher instructions, to try it out. Try it out on your own and test it. I know you're going to love it. And then that automatically puts you in what I call my Jazz for Young People, JFYP teacher test team. And I will share with you things that I'm working on, and I want your feedback so that we can continue to make each volume better than the last one, right? And that only works with working together. So volume 1 is ready to roll. Volume 2 is ready to roll. We're working on volume 3 right now. We're wrapping it up. We're at the tail end, but production takes a while, right? And so your feedback is very welcome, but you'll be the first to know, the first to have access, the first to and give input. Love to have you be on that team. And in case you are still teaching remotely, then I'm also planning on ways that we can create adaptations that will make it easy. And I hope that in this presentation, you saw how easily you can adapt it right now. Like, you could do this. And the only struggle you would have would be with the pitched instrument, the ones if your kids don't have pitched instruments at home. But everything else would work, and you could share with them and teach. So it's fantastic. The videos are free for you to use, and all you need is the lessons. So my name is Sharon Burch. I'm so excited to meet you. I'm so excited to share what we can do with jazz, and hopefully by seeing that, you know that you can do this too. It's easy. I wish you the best. Reach out to me, Sharon at SharonBurch.com. I can't wait to work with you.